Thank you once again, Nita. I'm very honored, very pleased to be part of this panel. Hi, Igo and Linda. Very happy to seeing you both. I'm in the middle of the workshop with the Agency for Gender Equality. So I will try to be brief and direct as much as possible and to give you an overview of the whole mandate of the Agency for Gender Equality and the legal framework of Republic of Kosovo. So I'm Edi Gusia, head of the Agency for Gender Equality within the Office of the Prime Minister. The agency is the central gender coordination unit within the government. It is the highest policy-making, monitoring and reporting body related to the implementation of the law on gender equality and the empowerment of role of the women and girls in Kosovo gender equality agenda overall. The long-term and short-term priorities of the agency's works are set in the framework of the implementation of the law on gender equality and the legal framework that guarantees the full rights of women and girls as a part of women's rights and human rights. AGE it has been proven in our journey almost 15 years through the consolidation of comprehensive and interinstitutional processes and approaches based on human rights, women's rights, with contemporary features and methods in designing and implementation of public policy, specific activities undertaken in fulfillment of its own mandate. In order to translate the obligation of the principles of the gender equality and the legal frameworks, Agency for Gender Equality, through its Division for the Legislations, offers annually its expertise on integration of gender perspective and gender mainstreaming in legislation, public policy, draft public policies, and sectorial strategies. At the same time, we work as an institution for capacity building of officials of the government, gender equality officers, but not in gender mainstreaming, gender budgeting, and other related fields. In order to address inequalities in our countries in 2010, the Agency for Gender Equality has drafted and the government has approved the first law for protection from domestic violence that was drafted together with the support of civil society organizations, Kosovo Women Network, and we have Iqbal Rugova today with us. So it was, how to say, an action that was pioneering in Kosovo. And 2 days ago, the parliament adopted the second law for protection from domestic violence and violence against women. At the same time, we are the main institution that have drafted all other instruments related to the implementation of the law for protection from domestic violence. So like standard operational procedures, how to treat the cases of domestic violence, a manual commentary for the law protection from domestic violence in order to help our institutions to better implement this law. Unfortunately, we are not very satisfied even with all these instruments that are put in place. So it's not anymore an issue of missing instruments, how to treat the violence against women. It's more an issue of cultural norm that in some way is pending the rule of law in Kosovo when it comes to protection of women's rights regarding violence against women. Due to all activities that were prepared in this action plan, we have the Commission for Verification of Status of the Survivors of the Sexual Violence during the war in Kosovo. The Commission is functioning, the government support for civil society organizations that are licensed in order to support survivors to apply for a small, I can call it pension. It's not anymore, it's not an issue of remedy because it's known who should pay the remedies. So it's small amount, and this commission together with civil society organization till now, there are more than 1,400 survivors of the sexual violence that benefit from small support from the side of the government. It's not only issue of amount, it's an issue of recognizing their loss, their contribution in peace building processes, and providing them support with psychological support and other medical checkups and supports. What is worth mentioning is that from this action plan, from this time, Agency for Gender Equality continuously supports civil society organization and first of all the Commission that works with survivors of the sexual violence. Beyond this all legislative and public policy achievements, we face a lot of challenges. Women in Kosovo are far behind adequate participation in the labor market and decision making. The number of cases of domestic violence and violence against women, as I mentioned, has been increased. And unfortunately, we have lost too many lives of women due to the femicide. Despite very advanced legislation in the field of gender equality, its implementation remains very challenging in many areas. So we continue to focus on developing and enforcing the implementation of the legislation by taking affirmative measures. Such an affirmative measure for registering the property in the name of the both spouses tax-free. Important initiative is that by the law on gender equality, we are obliged to every 4 years to draft public policy. So it's Kosovo Program for Gender Equality, and you need our part of our working group together with EGO. This action plan was approved in May 2020. We have evaluated its implementation for the first 2 years, 2020, 2021. And even being in the mid of the COVID, is very important that out of 34 goals of this action plan, 18 of them have been achieved. Approximately 60% of overall goals were being achieved in first 2 years that this action plan was approved. And you have to have in mind that we have been in the middle of socioeconomic and political crisis and COVID-2. And the key achievements during the time of implementation of the Kosovo program was that Istanbul Convention became part of the Constitution of Kosovo. Concept document on gender budgeting was approved by the government. The National Strategy for Protection from Domestic Violence was approved during this time of implementation of Kosovo program for gender equality. At the same time, for the first time in history of Kosovo, we have managed to present the first report in front of the Committee of Council of Europe, Grevio, even not being part of Council of Europe, but we have presented about our legal framework, about our challenges in order to protect women's lives. At the same time, the law for free legal aid has been amended during these processes, and now every woman that is victim of violence can apply for support and for the remedies without needing to declare is she working or not working. So this help from the side of legal aid is free for all categories of survivors.
Greetings to all of you, dear guests and ambassadors. I know you are there meeting today organized by our ambassador, Nita Lutsi, whom we know as not just activists, but also academia here in Kosovo, and cooperation existed a long time ago together. And today I'm not going to speak about numbers. I want to share stories, if you don't mind, because Edi wonderfully presented the situation in Kosovo. And I'm going to say that there is so much happening today with dialogue, and just for you to know that we are not just sitting, but doing things not even now, but even before. Yes, I'm executive director of Kosovo Women's Network, which numbers 190 organizations now, and they are all ethnic backgrounds, members of the network. And we work towards implementing the strategy that we draft together. We draft together and we implement together, because we also started fund inside the network to give grants to members, so we can in the end say we did this together. We implemented the strategy together. But I want to go back just shortly, Nita, a bit about 90s, because the work existed even earlier, decades earlier. And we were like 12 organizations, women's rights organization in 90s. But interesting for you to know that even in time of occupation, even in time of repression, even in time with no freedom for education, for health, for communication in Albanian, we have established bridges of cooperation with Women in Black Women's Network in Serbia. Imagine in the time of of hate and war, we women from two countries, we were sitting together. After the war, we have started a network established as a Kosovo Women's Network, but we never stopped communication with Women in Black. And I want to tell you the initiative we took after the war. When negotiations started, led by Mr. Ahtisaari, it was no women involved in the official dialogue. And we, women from Kosovo and Women in Black in Serbia, we decided to establish Women's Peace Coalition. And what we did is we had some allies, because both government, they were not transparent in when they're going to meet, what they're going to talk. So we had some allies inside UN body to tell us what is the next meeting topic will be and when. So what we did, Women in Black and Kosovo Women's Network, we met and we discussed that topic, and then we sent letters to both delegations to bring our perspective on that topic. So we were in this way, unofficially, we gave women's perspective in the time of negotiation. And I have to say that even Ahtisaari, he mentioned us saying we had been getting women's perspective in this talk, and he was thanking also Women's Peace Coalition and also Regional Women's Lobby for peace security in Southeastern Europe. But how did it start really to communicate with each other? It was not just we sitting, and this is important. It was not just we sitting and saying, now we're going to bring women's perspective of both countries. No, we first met in 2006, and we decided to go to a city outside of both countries, in Struga, kind of like neutral, in Northern Macedonia. And I want to share the first meeting when we got together. It was all these years, women from Pristina and Belgrade meeting each other, talking to each other, seeing each other. But in that meeting, they were women from other countries where rape, genocide, and all this repression happened. So, and of course, killing. And so imagine to meet small cities of Pristina with other small cities from Serbia, and both sides, they were, it was not really, they didn't know really what was going on. Let's say these women, what was going on in Serbia, or the cities from Serbia, they didn't know what is really going on in Kosovo. They didn't know the true reality, true story. So we met together first day, and I was supposed to start the meeting with the leader of Women in Black, Stasha Zajevic. So I stood up with her in front of 80 women, and I had this whisper in my ear from Stasha, the leader from Women in Black in Serbia, and she said, Igo, do you trust me? I said, yes, Stasha. She said, can you sit down? I'm like, Stasha. I whispered to her back. I said, Stasha, if I sit down, Kosovo women will kill me that I let you only open to open this meeting. She said, please, Igo, sit down. It's very important. And of course, I trusted Stasha, and I said. And then it was earthquake happened, emotional earthquake, because one by one, Women in Black stood in front of us, and they asked forgiveness of what happened in Kosovo in their name by their country. It was, I cannot describe that moment. It was for 2 hours, nobody would stop crying. Nobody would stop shaking their body, because it happened. First drops of healing, because healing and reconciliation cannot, I repeat, cannot happen without forgiveness, asking for forgiveness. So Women in Black did it, and this is where we bonded ourselves. After that, we even sent a huge statement together after that meeting. And in that statement, in the end of the statement, both groups from Kosovo and Serbia, we wrote in 2006, we wrote, Kosovo's future is independence. So we sent this statement to both government and, of course, to Mr. Ahtisaari, who was leading negotiation at that time. And just to explain, you know what happened? In Kosovo, we came and they treated us like heroina because the main TV station was there and they showed it on TV. Many people in Kosovo were crying during the main news when they heard Serbian women asking forgiveness. But when women in black went to Belgrade, they faced harassment, they faced threats. Their office was looted. So I wanted to share this because to work together for peace, it's not easy, but with understanding each other, with working together in solidarity, we can do it. And again, unfortunately, it was not really inclusion of women in this process. In Kosovo side, we had some groups working groups on this topic, but it was not the problem in this case, the countries, but the problem in this case was the main EU office who was closing doors to women's rights activists who has this experience, and it was no inclusion at all. So to say 1325, yes, it was adopted 2 decades ago, but still is an issue. Still is an issue to involve women in negotiation peace talks. Still is an issue to trust women that they can do miracles together, that women, when they work together, they can build peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Igo, for always sharing and enriching us so much with experience. Thank you, Edi, for all the work you do to push forward and make sure all that laws are implemented and we have a proper strategies. I apologize for background music. I am not in Pristina, so I am in Reykjavik, trying to find different common grounds and solidarities. As Igo was talking about, I think that from the start, the women's movement in Kosovo was seeking common grounds with other women and was seeking solidarities. And I'm so happy that NITA is organizing this conference and we get to at least try to communicate also with women's ambassadors and women in politics. For me, that was a venue that I personally didn't explore that much. Today, I will try briefly because we're doing this for March 8th and it's such an important day in the calendar of women's movement in Kosovo all the time, but maybe just some pictures of the movement and really just focusing on March 8th throughout the history. And this is what I will try to do briefly, to look at March Day as a sort of a day to unearth the histories and also the genealogies of feminist movement in Kosovo and trace, the trajectories, strategies, and especially the important historical moment of this day in war and in peace, in centers and in peripheries in the country, in different geographies. This is the history of erasure and distortion and obliteration and marginalization of women movement is very present. So I think that these conversation, sort of this transnational conversation, this transgenerational conversation become really an essential tool of communicating and connecting. To just launch in, I don't think that remembering the genealogies of the movements are not just sentimental tokens or the moments to glorify the past or romanticize the past, but it's really the moments of reflection. I think March 8th was firstly celebrated in Kosovo in 1948. And then you see the photos from 48, you see that women wear public space commemorating the right to participate in a public space. So the first sort of mobilization of women March 8th was in the 48 and then a little bit through the 50s, but then the day of March 8th really was turned throughout the socialist history into Mother's Day or Women's Day, and it was a day of giving flowers until 1999, where women in Kosovo gathered in Pristina to protest as the mothers and to read this public letter to then former Yugoslav president about the violence and about violence, especially to young Albanian boys that were increasingly being killed in Yugoslav army since 86 to 99. So the moment of March 8, I think 1990 marked the turning point when it became a day of protest for women in Kosovo. And then in 96, 97, 98, especially during the 98, women in the beginning of sort of full frontal war in Kosovo, women were the ones really organizing most of the protests. So during the march, which was the bloodiest in 1998, which was the bloodiest month of the beginning of the war, women organized 13 out of 18 protests, and it was all led and organized by women. And I think that's it's also beginning that turning into the March of 8 in a day of protest. I think it then in 2006, as Igor was mentioning early, that was the first day also that Kosovo Women's Network protested on 8th of March because the women in Kosovo, despite of very active and I have to maybe emphasize here that the 1990 women in Kosovo were sort of in the forefront and really shaping the civil resistance movement in Kosovo that lasted for 10 years, and women like Igo, women like Sevdia Ahmeti created all these organizations and did all this grassroots work and really set the foundation for what is now, I believe, a very vibrant feminist movement in Kosovo. So the 1990s is where we had the feminist movement being really present and being really formative in our not just politics, but culture and shaping daily life in Kosovo. So.
Okay. Hi to everyone. My name is Trina Binoku. I am a feminist activist coming from Pristina, Kosovo, and today I will be sort of the representative of the collective Mashtrojnë Festojmë, or for those who do not necessarily know what Mashtrojnë Festojmë is and what it means. Rough translation in English of Mashtrojnë Festojmë would be we don't celebrate, we march. And the main idea of this collective is for different feminist activists, NGOs, and different individuals from the civil society sector in Kosovo to come together and organize a march for 8th of March, International Women's Day. It has been an idea initiated by professors and students at the Faculty of Philosophy of University of Pristina back in 2016, and it has been ongoing since then. I must add that this collective is sort of fluid in its way of organizing, in the sense that different people come and go each year, and everyone is sort of welcomed. Our meetings are always public, be those that are online or physical, and everything that we sort of do is open to everyone who is interested to join. The main themes that this collective has been tackling the past years, of course, would be femicide and gendered violence as sort of the main issues that we are preoccupied in the feminist discourse in Kosovo. We have had, let's say, enormous number of women being killed in Kosovo, and that has been sort of the driving force behind our articulation every 8th of March. The main idea sort of this collective back in 2016 was to oppose sort of this dominant culture of celebrating this day, which is still ongoing, and not necessarily that it's an issue or a bad thing or problematic, but we try to change the narrative of this day in the sense that it is not a day of celebration, but it's a day of marching and protesting, because in our opinion, there is not much to celebrate, and the situation is quite dire and of an emergency. We believe the violence that is perpetrated against women and girls is definitely and should be treated as a national urgency, and it's definitely not. So it is something that we have been sort of saying all these years, but much more during the past, let's say, 2 or 3 years. I must also include here sort of the feminist organizing that has been going on beyond 8th of March that I was also part of. I myself am also part of the feminist collective in Kosovo. So through that and through other groups, we have been engaged in tackling this violence in different means, most specifically through protests in the streets. And unfortunately, not maybe what we would like to do. These protests are very reactive, that something happens and then we go out and protest. But sort of the context has sort of made us sort of our response to be in this reactive form, which is not something that we usually would like it to be, because we believe that maybe our response and our opposition to the patriarchal system should be on an ongoing basis, which we actually do, and we also are active in everyday situations, but in this scale, this big scale of having a whole group of people coming together in opposing the violence is something that we would like to see on a more systematic way, not in this sort of reactive way where a femicide happens and then we do it and then it's forgotten and then we go out for the other one that is to come. So this is sort of the main interventions that we do for 8th of March, and what has happened is that the support and maybe the response from the government, which is the address of most of our requests and our critique, has been to some extent non-existent. Last year we were actually fined as a collective for organizing the 8th of March. Well, it's definitely not an easy task to sort of organize a group that is so broad, as you said, and in perspectives, in will to be engaged in all the preparation of all the physical, emotional, and intellectual work that goes on into this collective. So the drive I can only maybe speak for myself, is definitely the tradition that we have presented in in having a march every 8th of March. For me, that is one of the biggest drives that makes me want to include myself in such a scale. But also, you know, I could not stand idly by while my feminist sisters and friends get engaged and sort of organize this whole march, and for me not to be involved. For me, at least, being a feminist activist and saying that you are a feminist activist and not being involved in organizing the 8th of March would be quite contradictory. So in that sense, that is what sort of drives me to be involved. I can only speak for myself. As you said, it's a very diverse group, and as I said, there's a lot of people coming and going. It's not sort of a core group of people that has been since 2016. So even our political articulation has changed, even our means of interventions have changed. Well, definitely this has been something that has been going on for the last years, especially with feminist organizations in the region. We've had sort of an understanding of a mutual agenda in terms of what we will oppose and what will be the theme of our 8th of March. As I'm aware, most cities in the region have also organized similar interventions in terms of protests and marches for 8th of March. So that has been something that has been going on, and we've had sort of, as I said, an understanding of a common agenda. But on a global scale, I must say that maybe I would like to see more of a collaboration between the collective Mushrooms Festoim with other collectives in the world that maybe have similar intervention on 8th of March. So yeah, maybe something to think about for the upcoming years, and something for us to think about in terms of getting knowledge and experience from other countries on how to maybe make our response and our resistance even more, let's say, louder.